My little arm has been my compass. It has just led me to I should have used it as my compass when I was younger. It has led me to the greatest opportunities in my life that I think honestly that a lot of people I think at my age have not experienced yet, and I too hope that they experience something like that when they reach whatever age they are at. So, if anything, you can see a disability as a negative, or you can see it as a compass.
Hey, Leah, welcome to the Wild Heart Athletics podcast. I really appreciate you coming on today to kind of share about yourself, your story, and just talk about what you do. I know you're a triathlete, which is really interesting. I can't wait to dive in there and learn all about you. And I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and tell us about yourself to our audience.
Hey everyone, I'm Leah Kaplan. I hail from Spokane, Washington, and well, should I say my age? I'm 32 years old. Okay, some of you guys probably thought I was like in my 20s, which I appreciate. And I am an elite triathlete and a frequent dabber of other adaptive sports.
All right, perfect. Spokane. Okay. I've never been to that part of Washington yet, so I'm looking forward to it in the future.
Yeah, it's nice.
So you mentioned that, is it a para triathlete is what you said?
Yep.
Could you kind of explain that? Because I've never heard that term before. Like I've heard of triathletes and triathlons and stuff like that. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, so we added the para in front of triathlete because just like you call like Paralympians, and so that word para is more appropriate for para triathlete versus just a triathlete. I mean, I do a mix of both, but as an adaptive athlete, instead of saying disabled athlete or adaptive athlete who participates or competes in triathlons, like you would say for track, they call them para track as well. So that term is more PC friendly for adaptive athletes. And now para triathlon is so we do swim, bike, and run. And so just like triathlons, just like Ironman, well, not like Ironman because I said we do like a quarter of the distance of Ironman. I'm not about to do full Ironman. And so we do the swimming. And what's nice is with the para triathlon is you go against the people who are in your classification as well. So all the athletes get classified based off of their capabilities, and then you compete against them. And so para triathlon, I started in 2019 a little bit, and then when COVID hit, I that's when I kind of was like, I think this is an opportunity for me to really try, like maybe try to have a goal for something. Try to do like my first adaptive para race. So when COVID shut down, I actually decided to start training.
All right. So I'm really curious, what is, in your opinion, what's the greatest thing about the sport of like triathlons and triathletes? Like, what's your favorite part about it? And like, how has that sport really impacted your life?
So what I love about para triathlon is, well, I guess when I first began, I went to the Olympic Training Center. It was like an introduction camp, and that camp was really awesome because it really showed me like, okay, this is how we train for a triathlon if you ever were interested in doing this. And I was amongst other athletes that were adults as well, which was really nice because I thought I was scared I was going to be the oldest person there, but I wasn't. So I really appreciated that there were people who were fathers, mothers. There were people there who were amputees who recently just had their accidents. So you just wanted to kind of get out there and learn about the adaptive world. And so I kind of was like, I think I like this community a lot. These guys are really cool. And they all have their own little lives too and are able to do this as a hobby as well as maybe go for Paralympics. So the best part of the community is just I would say it's fun, but there's a lot of growth to it too. And what's fun is like also every single race you do, you it's so unpredictable because the routes change all the time. For example, sometimes a race would be a longer distance than what it's supposed to be just because that's what the course was, or that's just because they don't have that long of a swimming, but so they change it to make it a longer running, something like that. So you're really learning how to adapt, but also I would say the community is the biggest thing that actually kept me going was the community. I would fly out to a lot of places, and it was always like a family reunion every single time we'd all get together, and that was so much fun. And I learned how to put a bike together by myself, which was probably harder than racing, was learning how to put my bike together, because that was a hot mess putting my bike together. Like, I just had all my stuff. I'd break pieces while I was putting my bike together, but everyone was always like, "Oh, I'll help you. I'll help you." That's the fun thing, is no one judges you. They're always like, "Oh, okay, welcome to the first Paralympics," or not Paralympics, but welcome to the first Triathlon. Good luck. I hope you have fun. So, and that's because everyone has such a different capabilities. You can't really judge someone's speed. And that's what's kind of the beauty of parasports.
Could you elaborate on that? Because I love how you said that, the beauty of parasports.
So the beauty of parasports is you can't judge someone's speed, because disability is such a wide range, and disability can be seen and unseen as well. And when you attend one of those parasport events, your judgment kind of goes out the door, because you're just like, you know what, that person who might be missing a leg, I can't wait to see what they do. You can't compare yourself, because I'm missing my arm and they're missing their leg. They could be faster in a different situation, but I'm so excited to see what they can do. It's just, that's what's nice, and it's not competitive in a way where like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna beat that Blade Runner. I I just know I wouldn't be able to beat some people, like wheelchair runners. I'm not able to beat. They're a lot faster. They just have different mechanics than I do, and it's fun to watch other people like use those mechanics, use what they can to really compete. And their mentality, their as an athlete, are all the same, just like everybody else. They have the competitive drive in them, so that's always fun. And I don't know, I always say it's like Disneyland sometimes, going to these events, because I go to a lot of camps throughout the summer. A lot of camps, because I'm part of Dare2Tri, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on triathletes. That was founded by Paralympian Melissa Stockwell. As I hit the table.
That's all right. I really loved how you were talking about. That's something I've really noticed too, with talking to the athletes, how everybody has that competitive sport, competitive drive, because you are athletes. But what's really unique that I've noticed is like the community aspect is really important for you guys. And that's something that I've definitely found when it came to the rock climbing community. And so how has that community maybe impacted your life? And, how do you kind of give back to that community as well?
So I would say the community. So I was very fortunate, because I'm adopted. I was very fortunate that my mom was very, very supportive on recognizing my identity and supporting me on, okay, let's figure out ways to embrace your disability, because I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this world. So my mom actually, she researched all the time, and she would take us to summer camps. Since I was about 9 years old, I would go to summer camps for people with similar disabilities. And then I got involved in adaptive sports when I was about 16 years old, for swimming. And I think as a teenager, you don't appreciate it as much as you do now. Obviously, you're just a teenager. You're just like, nah, I don't take life for granted, whatever. So I used to compete with like Jessica Long, with all these other Paralympians now. Yeah, she was in the lane next to me once, and I'm just like, go get them, girl. I see what they see now. So, and I had like a friend with one arm, and her name is Anna Johannes. She ended up going to the Paralympics as well, and it was just fun. We just had a great time, and I was like, it's so much fun walking around like wearing a tank top and having both of our arms out, because a lot of people would stare, but they would stare at both of us, not just me. So I was like, this is fun. And then I went to college. I was thinking about doing sports in college, but I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to balance sports and education, so I decided to not do any sports. And then I realized after graduating college, I just didn't feel, I was like, there's something missing. I feel like I haven't really embraced another part of me, or I haven't really, I think, I guess, reach my full potential of who I am and who I want to be. So that's when I kind of got involved with exercising in general, just marathon running and half marathon. And then the disability community, social media, it kind of helped a lot.
So when you were talking about you guys going and swimming and being able to have your tank tops out, what is that sensation like to you guys to just like be free? I mean, how important is that, do you think?
It's such a relief, because in a way it's like you're just not alone. Just someone staring at both of you guys, trying to figure out both of you instead of you being singled out. It's like being the black sheep of a group that you don't even know who they are. You're just always going to be the black sheep, and it's nice to not be the black sheep of something, because they have two black sheeps. So it's kind of like, you're like, well, if you're going to wonder about her, then you might as well ask me too, and then we can kind of bounce off of each other for support on how to answer like kids' questions or the community questions about our disability, because you're always going to get stared at, and sometimes when you're alone, you're like, you just don't have that support with you. You just have to kind of pretend there's support with you. And it's just nice when you don't actually have to pretend.
It's something that like a lot of other athletes have expressed too, is like that, there's like, for example, I mentioned the rock climbing community and stuff like that, and you look at the able-bodied, but then there's just something totally different, for the adaptive athletics when you guys get together, and, you're mentioning the sport. And I think that's really important, that people kind of need to understand that. And do you think that's something people should really strive for, is to find some type of support, whether it be in whether it's sports or not sports, but like finding that community that supports them and is there for them?
Yeah. So I think in 2000, it was close to 2019. So I graduated college already, and I was teaching special education by then. My mom showed me this nonprofit organization called Lucky Fin Project. You should definitely follow them. They've expanded so much beyond just upper amputees and stuff, like ambulatory focus. They have expanded beyond that. And so I found Lucky Fin, and I was just like, oh, it's a community. Like, there's a forum even as well for people to ask questions about situations like, how can I teach my daughter how to put her earrings in with one hand, And that's where I was like, oh, I'm going to follow this page. I'm going to like it, and I'm going to help answer some of the questions. And when I started doing a sport, I tagged them in it, and then they posted me one day, and I was like, they featured me, and I was like, oh, thank you so much. And they're like, oh yeah, a lot of people have questions and stuff. And I was like, So that's when I kind of found like a little bit of a purpose of, oh, I love that. Like, Lucky Fin wants to like educate people too. Like, that's something that we can do, is educate as social media becomes bigger.
Yeah, that's what I've found, like with social media, right? Like, it's got like the good with the bad, but I think the education thing is important. And that's something that I'm working on. And I've also been kind of fascinated with too, is, for example, we're kind of staying on that community topic, but like you said, someone that has some type of adaptive that they're learning to live with, you find that community and they can teach you like tips and tricks. And that's, some misconceptions, I think, and things that I don't think about as the able-bodied community. And I think that's what's really vital, like you said. But then you have that resource, social media, and you have those nonprofits like Lucky Fin, which is perfect to have.
Yeah. And it's just, and then I ended up like developing a really good relationship with the founder also of Lucky Fin, and she has just been super awesome and supportive. It's cheering me. I would say she's been cheering me on for like over 5 years now. It's almost 10 years, and it's just nice because I would email her and she would care. So that's what was kind of nice, was as she was sharing my little journey, I got to find more people who kind of just really cared and lived vicariously through me, and that just meant a lot to me, because for me that's more of like, I hope that as you learn that I'm doing these sports, you can feel brave enough to go out there too, because it's something that everyone should try as well, even if you're born or if you just became an amputee as well.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, it's important to really put yourself out there to grow. Like you said, you've grown so much in this community that you've become a part of. And so I'm curious of like, what kind of growth have you seen over the past couple of years, whether it be personal and whether it be in the athletics world as well?
I would say there's definitely a mix of both for sure. Like, I would say personally, there's lots of growth because I guess personally as an athlete, that's separate from actually personal growth, I guess, because as like, 'cause I was competing at a high level as an elite athlete. I'm competing internationally as well. That I learned a lot about how to be an athlete, just about like resilience, but also of how to calm yourself down when you want to panic while you're doing the sport as well. And also just feeling that worthiness, like imposter syndrome started to become a thing. And that's where I was like, am I even good enough to be here? Like, I don't feel like I'm that fast to be here. Like look at all these other people. So I learned as an athlete, like you really can't compare yourself either. So I started to have to set myself back and like just be the best athlete that I can be. Like the only person in your competition should be is who you were last time you raced. And I was really excited. I finally had a coach who was very fascinated with like adaptive sports, who put so much passion into it to help me to grow as an adaptive athlete and just as an athlete. And then personally, I would say just my personal life, it's been a very healing journey as well because I decided to put a lot of the skills that my coach was teaching me about mental health, and I was deciding to put that into my daily life as well. When I was healing, just through like past trauma and just healing situations. So I would actually bring it with my I see a counselor every single week, and I started doing sports mentality, but also just kind of figuring out like why would you panic while swimming, or why do you think you're not good enough for the sport, like what really figuring out that was really important to me. And also just embracing my disability was a huge thing. That I would say the sport, but also in general being with that community has helped, is embracing that disability.
Yeah, I love how you brought up the internal validation, right? Like seeking, am I better than the last competition? Am I better than the last training session? Stuff like that. Like it's very internally focused. You're not focused on what other people are doing. It's how your performance is. What can you do better? What did you get right? What did you wrong? And like you said, now you're taking those, psychological exercises
Mhm.
into your daily life. And so have you seen benefits from that both in your sports and in your personal life?
Yeah, I would say that a lot. And maybe it's because I'm 30 now. I don't know. It's like I woke up when I was 30 and all of a sudden I was like, I give zero damns about anything right now. I don't know what it was, but also after every single race, you get two choices. You get to be really mad at yourself, or you get to just be like, I learned something from this race. It took me a while though. I still get upset sometimes after a race if I don't feel like I performed to my own expectation. So that's when like people around me, they they tell me, Leah, you actually did a lot better than I think you did. And I was like, really? So that's where it's like then teaching myself, you know what, I need to give myself some grace. I need to really give myself like grace because like I had surgery in March and I did a race in June, and I was I did better than I thought, but I was still like, oh, I should have come in first place, because I've been doing this for so long. But you gotta take things into consideration. So I've learned how to give myself a little bit more grace without without being a victim of something.
Yeah, you said a lot of interesting things, and I'm kind of like you, right? Because I'm 30, and like you, when I hit that 30 mark, I was just like, yeah, I don't really care anymore. And then, starting this podcast, I got a little bit of that imposter syndrome, right? And so it's like
Hmm.
trying to walk on eggshells to make sure I'm portraying everybody in a great way, to asking proper questions and stuff like that. So, you know, giving, like you said, the grace to make mistakes and to just slowly try to be better, I think is very important. And that is also like a hard thing to do too, is to really come to terms with who you are as a person, and then at the same time really not worrying about what other people think. And like you still have those moments, like we're not perfect. It's not like it just healed overnight. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciate you like sharing that and talking about that, because that is something that a lot of people I think struggle with nowadays. Like you said, accepting, your adaptation, and then at the same time like embracing it wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And to add to that, that triggered me to think about as a child, like with a disability, and wanting to participate in high school, middle school, elementary sports, everyone wanted me to try to do what they can do. No one wanted to make adjustments for me because they thought that it was more appropriate for me to try to be like them instead of asking me what I needed. And as I've been doing the sport, as I follow so many awesome like athletes, and I read their captions thoroughly, and I just like I internalize them, I remember them, like jot notes down. I'm just like, okay, what basically, what they're thinking now is like, I wish I had these people and I wish someone wrote these kind of stuff when I was a kid and taught the teachers I had, the coaches I had about these little things about why don't you ask what the people with disabilities need versus like, oh, let's try to be like us. Oh, you can't be like us, then I don't think you should participate at all. And that's what I've learned also, is that, like, learning how to advocate for other people as well, even because I do special education for people with development disabilities, advocating for them. Sometimes they're nonverbal, but I don't want them to feel like they don't have a voice still. So, it's like I've gotten stronger on finding my own voice. So I should, do what I teach.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing right now, right? Is, raising awareness and, like you said, just allowing people to know they can. Trying to think of how to word this really well, because you brought up a lot of points.
You won't offend me. It's okay.
No, I'm trying to put it in a really good way. Not raise awareness, but I'm trying to say is like, that's what I'm trying to say. Whether it's raising awareness or how can we bridge the gap, I think is a better way to put it. How can we bridge the gap so that the able-bodied community can understand the adaptive community better? And one, see you guys and know and understand you guys are capable, because you are athletes, you're capable of doing things. You just do things differently because that's just how you have to do it. And then, like you said, knowing that, okay, you can't do it just like maybe an able-bodied person, but because you can't do it like me doesn't mean you can't do it at all. I think that's important to really, people need to understand that.
Yeah. And man, I would say our society, or maybe it's us aging, it's just people are able to talk about more, but I would just say like our society and like mental health and just thinking about how we rephrase things has just elevated and grown so much. Like in a way, I would say we disabled athletes, I never realized I made other people feel uncomfortable, and they would do things in spite of their being uncomfortable. So that's why they would want to help me, but they weren't helping me. They were wanting to help themselves, not feel so uncomfortable about having someone like me there. Like I would go to basketball camps even, and coaches and even the athletes were like, they look at each other, they would have silent conversations with their eyes, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna pretend I don't notice, and I'm gonna go for it, and I'll figure out my own way. But there's that's I think I don't know, I would say my little arm has become I'm just so glad I have it now compared to when I was little. I used to hate having it. But honestly, I think I'm such a better person. I feel like I'm a really good person because I have this disability now.
I'd have to concur with that, but I would say you're a great person because working with special education is a very patient and very rewarding career. I commend you for what you do. I have a friend's fiance that does that, and that is a big step. And I can understand that is a very complex job. And so I'm thankful that, there's people like you that do that.
Yeah. My little arm has been my compass. It has just led me to I should have used it as my compass when I was younger. It has led me to the greatest opportunities of my life that I think, honestly, that a lot of people, I think, at my age have not experienced yet. And I too hope that they experience something like that when they reach whatever age they are at. So, if anything, you can see a disability as a negative, or you can see it as a compass.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And I appreciate you saying it like that. And kind of going off of that, you were talking about opportunities. So when was like the first opportunity where you got to compete, and like how was that during your first competition?
So my biggest first competition that I realized was a really big deal was I went to the Paralympic trials for swimming in 2007. Well, it was actually that spring of 2008, because the Summer Olympics was coming up. I just all of a sudden I went to that race and I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I should go. Okay, I'm gonna go for Beijing. Okay, why not? I'm at this level and I just all of a sudden I like started panicking because I was like, I think I'm gonna try going for Beijing. While I'm at a race doing prelims, I'm just like, okay. My mom's like, oh, this is what you want now, and I was like, you brought me here for a reason, or shouldn't I want this? Like, should I want this? So that's when I realized it, and it was a pretty big deal because there was big competitors there, like Melissa Stockwell and Jessica Long. Like Jessica Long was very famous then too, and she's one of the most decorated Paralympian there is in the world. And she's just she just takes it for her. It's like a warm up, I swear. And I was just like, yikes! But I really did appreciate the journey, and I had a best friend who was also going through the same journey as me, and she ended up making the Paralympics, and I didn't. And not once did it cross my mind that I was so upset that I didn't make it. I was so happy that my friends made it because they have been swimming a lot longer than I have. And I was like, you know what, you guys really deserve that. I would love to go, but you guys deserve that. And I'm happy to cheer you guys on and brag to people that I know somebody in the games. So that was probably my biggest, like, oh my gosh, there's a thing called Paralympics. And Paralympics is in 10 days as well right now. We are 10 days out.
That's right. It's coming up August 28th, correct? It's going to be streaming on Peacock, which will be excellent.
Yeah, and I really want people to stream into it. And I honestly think it's just growing and growing every single year. It's like growing by 100,000 people, I would say, viewers. And I'll take that because I am happy to promote it.
Yeah, that's insane that it's growing that much. That's incredible.
Yeah, the viewership is growing a lot, but I think other companies are realizing, like, people that are different are actually kind of cool. Like we should normalize them into our society and into our ads.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing is, like you said, advertising and raising awareness, because I think that's where maybe some people have some misconceptions, because I mean, there's all types of people and you can't generalize everybody, but I think a lot of it comes to whether it's an uneasiness of like how to approach someone that maybe has an adaptation, or if you want to say disability, I was talking to her name's Sarah Evans. She's an amputee soccer player, and she just basically said, she's like, when people approach me, the best way I've ever been approached is someone at a storefront, like a worker, was just like, hey, if you need help with anything, let me know. Other than that, they just kind of left me alone. And she said that was perfect because they were just like, they weren't asking if I needed help. They weren't trying to help. They were just letting me do my own thing because they saw me as capable. And she goes, that's what I really appreciate, is for people to see that we are capable.
100%. And I know, so like when I was studying special education in college, a lot of people would ask like, what should I do? How should I approach someone like this? And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I'm kind of in a similar situation as people, who are different, who have a hard time communicating, or who just like, I learned how to advocate, I would say. And because I learned how to advocate for a lot of developmental disability population, it helped me to advocate for myself, but also for my community. And I would say just a lot of, I still get like stared at, and I still get people like, who would just be like, my number one thing is it's so funny when people like come up to me, they don't see that I'm missing a hand yet. They just are generous people who are like, do you need a hand? And then they realize I have one hand, and I swear in their head, they're just like mortified that they said that. And it's hilarious because I'm just like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna pretend that, you didn't know about it. That's fine. And it's just hilarious because they always say, do you need a hand? And I'm sure from now on, they're going to be like, I'm never going to ask anyone if they need a hand. And I just say, no, I'm good. like I joined a new gym and I've been doing like weightlifting and stuff. They just tell me, you tell us if you need something, like, and they'll like, and they'll say, can I make a suggestion for you? And I'm just like, actually, yeah, that'd be great. Instead of me struggling, and then I take up time to like, because sometimes I'm like, I didn't even get a workout in because I'm just trying to figure out how to adapt, but I want, no, they don't let me do that. They're like, no, let's find something, let's find you a way to figure that out. So you use that whole gym time. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's something we could all use is figuring out ways to, you know, try new things and stuff like that and figure out little things that we can do. And I love that you mentioned strength training because I'd love to talk about your training routine and things like that because you mentioned you got a full-time job, you're helping with special
Mhm.
education. And I think, well, one, I think a lot of people don't understand that even Olympic athletes and the Paralympics and you guys, have full-time jobs and you're a full-time athlete. And so how do you balance, your personal life and your training life? And what's kind of your, I guess you could say, a breakdown of like a weekly training routine for you? Because, as a triathlete, I know you have to swim, you have to bike, you have to run, and then you need that strength training too to kind of make your body more injury resilient. So I'd love to hear what it's like for you.
Yeah. So when I was teaching for like I think about 2 years, and I started the training regimen, I wasn't training as intensely as I am now because honestly it was hard to balance out teaching because I was in a classroom from like 8 to 5 basically also. So I would work out in the afternoon. I would work out when I got home, and I would do 2 sports after I got home. So I wouldn't have dinner until about 9 or 8. And so, because I had a really hard time waking up early in the morning, not gonna lie, you can be an elite athlete and not wake up in the morning, and you're still good enough to be an athlete. Just saying, people really take pride in that. And I was like, I'm not a morning person. I'm gonna sleep in. And also, I had a dog, so I was like, okay, well, so I'd walk him every single morning early, and I would count that as like some workout as well. But evenings was my thing. Was I'm gonna hop on my bike, and we have a lot of snow, so I'd hop on my bike indoors while watching TV. Or I even sometimes would eat pizza while I was watching, or hang out with my friends. I tell my friends, "You can hang out with me, but I'm going to be on my bike, on my stationary bike, in the living room because I live by myself." And they were like, "I guess that's kind of weird." And I'm like, "Well, you're gonna have to get used to it. I'm gonna have to figure it out." And then in order for me to get and then when I went to training camps, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you guys do this all day?" And they're like, "Yeah." So actually, in 2022, I actually decided to leave teaching in order to work remotely for um, for my county in development, and still working with development disabilities population. So I started to figure out my schedule. I got a coach, and she would always put my workouts in every single week. She's awesome. And I would have to just kind of figure out my meetings, how to work around my meetings, and how to work out, lunch breaks, and how early should I wake up. So I would say now, for 2 years, I started to swim from 6 to 7 in the morning, go home, and then take my dog to the park, and then I would just kind of settle in and email people, go into meetings, and then my lunch break for about 45 minutes, I would go on the bike, on my stationary bike. And then when I'm done with work for the whole entire day, I would finish the bike workout and then run outside or run on the treadmill, depending on the weather. But for 6 days out of the week, I was swimming from 6 to 7 early, even on the weekends, because I really, really didn't like so many people in the pool who would just standing there and stuff. I was like, "Can you move, please?" So, oh yeah, and they were like, "Can you not splash me?" And I'm like, "We're in the pool, honey." So yeah, and then I would say, and then I did track workouts late at night as well, because sometimes there were sports at high school. Do you remember like football, soccer, all those activities?
Oh, yeah.
So I'd wait until 8 p.m. to do a track workout, or I would switch it to a weekend as well. And also balancing like social life. I would say my social life became the triathlon community. I would say I still talk to my friends and stuff, but I also was at that age where I didn't really care to go out and party and stuff anyways. So I don't feel like I had FOMO from that. Um, my socialization was talking about triathlon all the time, and talking to my friends, my adopted friends, crying to them on the phone, being like, I don't know if I'm good enough for this. Like, how are you feeling also? I feel like we're in a like dead spot. So yeah, and then my boyfriend, he's been a huge support. Like he would be like, you know what, I'll take the dogs in the evening and you go work out. And I was like, thank you. Because I was always worried about that too. So it's kind of like balancing out communicating also. And when I would travel, because my mom lives in the other side of the state, I bring all my gear. I bring my running gear and I'm like, okay, I'm going to run this whole weekend then when I'm going to visit her. So yeah, it's really of just balancing it out, but also communicating with people. I'm like, I want you to know like I'm training for something and I hope you can respect that. I will, before I hang out with you guys on the boat and stuff, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to go like bike like for 2 hours in the morning. And that's when I'm like, hey, how much does it mean to me to socialize? And also how much does it mean to me to also, get my workout in before it gets too hot.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point too. Is like the way you're talking about it, it's like you're saying yes to yourself because it's important to you, right? Making sure you get that exercise in. And I think that's cool to see the transition from like, you going from working in person to now working remote. You have that flexibility, but at the same time, you still have to plan that around. So it sounds like you've really developed a good planning routine. And like you said, your communication has improved. And given that you've done this for 3 years, how do you continue to like maintain your drive towards that and like your motivation? And how do you talk to yourself on the days you don't want to do it? Because I know there are days like that.
Oh yeah, like this morning. I would just honestly, I think sometimes when I wasn't feeling good. I would say also as a female too, we have all these hormones too. Like, everybody has hormones, but as a female, recognizing to listen to your body with the hormones as an athlete as well is huge thing that has changed my life too. Because some days I was just like, I just don't feel good today. So I would switch my rest days. Honestly, I would just switch my rest days and be like, you know what? It's okay if today's gonna be my rest day and I switch it up. And that's what's nice about my coach. She understood that, where she was like, that's fine. You are able to switch things around. And that made me feel better because I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, if I didn't work out today, or then I need to do extra miles. No, like rest days were really important. That I was like, I just don't feel like me today. I don't feel like I'm going to be able to have a strong practice, or I don't feel like the practice is going to help me. It's just, I'm just not feeling good today. So yeah, it was nice to be able to be flexible with that. I was also getting my master's the last 2 years too. Online though. And so I do my homework after I'd work out, or I bring my homework with me sometimes on the boat and just start finishing my essays, or finish the essays on my phone and then copy and paste and go put it back on the computer. Or I sometimes would do all my homework on my rest days, get them all done for the whole entire week. And then just submit them all.
That's a lot. I'm right there with you when it comes to schoolwork, being in my program I'm in right now, unfortunately. But something that I really like too is you're talking about rest days and like being able to manipulate your training schedule. How hard is it to be able to pump the brakes when it comes to stuff like that? Because I've been in similar situations where I'm like, okay, well, I still got to get up early so I can get this done. I still want to work out. I still got to study for 8 hours, depending on what I'm doing. And then at the same time, I have these podcasts. So how hard was it? And do you think it's good to be able to develop that intuition to pump those brakes? And do you think that's something a lot of people should learn?
I think pumping the brakes is a really good idea, because you also have to think sustainability of your life. Like, is this going to be sustainable for you to just be running around crazy? Like, it's like being Tasmanian. You're just going to run around like that. And you think that's going to work forever? No. So you might as well practice like a different strategy. There was times where I was doing way too much, and it was overwhelming sometimes. And I would just take it out by just blaming myself for taking on too much. And so that's when I just I'd be like, you know what? My homework's not due till Thursday. I don't feel like working out today. I'm just not going to do any of that, but I'm not going to shame myself by saying like, oh man, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not a good athlete. I didn't train today, or I didn't finish my homework today. No. And I still had fun. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put everything to the side. It's sometimes you just got to push yourself to rest, I would say, because you really have to recognize that you are not your sport. You're not like, it's like I had to learn, like, I'm not a triath. I'm not like triathlete isn't what defines me. It's what I do about it that defines me. And so that's where you just have to keep recognizing that. And I would say counseling honestly helped a lot with that for me to recognize how to just take a break, because my counseling sessions were probably that time where I would be able to just breathe for an hour and realize I needed this. And so I'm going to keep on scheduling it.
Yeah, you bring up a good thing is like the shame, right? Feeling that shame of, oh, I didn't do this or I didn't do that. I think that's like the hardest thing. And that goes for anybody. It doesn't have to be an athlete. And
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
Oh, like social media, like people think hustling, like hustling is like, if you're not hustling, then you're not successful. And that's such common misconception right now. And I think it's very toxic.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Something, I don't know if you know who Cal Newport is, but he's got a book. He wrote a couple books, and he's a professor, I think at MIT or something like that. But he wrote a book on deep work and another one on slow productivity, which is like for people that work in like knowledge jobs, whether you're like professors or you write, things like that. And he was talking about slow productivity is just taking your time, and you're not like, it's kind of anti hustle culture, which is really good. I think there's a balance, right? Like you need to work really hard, but then you also need to
Mhm.
find that balance to where you have those rest days, or you go spend time with friends, because at the end of the day, like your job is just a job, your sport is just a sport, but your friends and like significant others, like those are people that are important. Those are the ones that support you, and those are the ones that are going to be around for the long term.
Yeah, I don't think in college and high school we were learned to how to severance between work and personal life. I don't think we learned how to do that. So that's and that goes for everything, like sport and then my personal life. Like, how do I not? Like, how do I severance both of that? So, and I would say like, well, oh, I totally forgot what I was going to say, but yeah. And I was going to answer your other question was so I had my accident in March this year, and I had a goal of making Paris 2024, and we are now in August, and I'm not going to the games. And so I would say processing that was difficult because I did have to stop. With my surgery, I wasn't able to work out for like over a month. And all of a sudden my whole world, like I felt like I was depressed. I don't think I was clinically depressed. I felt very like lonely. I felt really isolated. I just felt like I had no purpose because I wasn't working out anymore. And it kind of hit me where I was like, this would have stopped in the way anyways, because what if I'm like 80? I'm not gonna keep on doing this. So it's kind of a good lesson for me to really reflect on, you know, that sometimes stopping and changing your routine is not a bad thing as well. So yeah, I felt like all my friends forgot me too, because I was like, well, they're all doing triathlon races, they're all training, and no one's really reaching out to me anymore saying how's training, because it's like, so I felt like I wasn't relevant to a lot of the disability community anymore. And that was really hard.
Would you mind kind of like walking us through or elaborating on that journey? Just because I know there's probably people out there that are in similar situations, and whether it's like for a sport or like
Yeah.
family emergencies or things like that. Because I think that's good for people to hear those stories, because it reminds us that, one, we're human, and that it's okay to have these feelings, and just to be able to process it and find your way to process it.
Yeah, I would say even if an injury, even if something that sets you back, sometimes I think it's okay though. I gave myself a couple days where I really did feel really lonely. I was like, I addressed it. I was like, I feel I feel left out. I feel FOMO. And also I felt really lousy. And so, yeah, I would see my counselor talk about that. I would also express it to my family members too. And I'd also call my coach because I was like, I don't want you to forget me. And my coach was like, I won't forget you. And so I would talk to her about how I felt. Kind of, and then my friends who would check in sometimes, who were triathletes, they would be like, "Hey, Leah, how are you?" And I would be honest. I was like, you know what? Do you have time? And I would be honest because I was like, I actually am feeling this way. Instead of just saying, I'm fine. Because I just valued those relationships with my friends and I really wanted them to know like how much I really valued the community. And I really wanted them to know, like, please don't forget me. Like, is there any way I can be included? And also, please don't be afraid to tell me if you're going to a race. Some of my friends were like, "Oh, sorry, Leah, I didn't want to tell you I was racing." And I was more hurt that you didn't tell me you were racing because I would love to cheer you on. So just navigating that and just really talking it out with people and really being honest actually with people and telling them, I'm actually not okay right now. I'm actually feeling really bad. And people can say, "Oh, Leah, you're playing victim, you're playing boohoo," and I was like, I don't really care because we have those feelings. I'm not gonna always pretend like, "Oh, I'm so happy I got surgery and I'm not racing anymore." And so, yeah, I felt really far away from the disability community. I just felt like I was really irrelevant. Like that, that's actually pretty hard. So then I kind of had to step back and be like, really think about people in the disability world. Like, does everyone in the disability world have to have a purpose? Do we have to be so grand? Like, I really started asking myself these questions. So, and then I kind of started to answer my own questions. And that's what kind of helped me to really accept where I am now. Not going to the games, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to swim in that Seine river anyways, so maybe that's a sign, but I was just like, I'm okay that I didn't get in. I'm okay. So I check in with my friends who didn't get in either. And I would say, how are you doing?
So you mentioned that, you were kind of thinking of some questions and getting answers to that and kind of going through that journey. So what was that like? And, you mind elaborating on that?
Like how I answered my own questions.
Yeah.
Um, Talking to a lot of other para athletes. I would also read their captions. Instagram has kind of become everyone's diary. Um, so I started reading other people's stuff and I started really like kind of looking through their Instagram, really like evaluating them and looking at their captions and just being like, and really also separating myself from, okay, social media is only the highlights. I also like it's also maturing, it just maturing within as well, realizing that okay, everybody on social media also isn't they're not doing that every single day. I bet there's people with disabilities who are just living an ordinary life, who don't feel like they need to live such a big presence in the world. And so I was like, okay, I think I'm going to take a break for a little bit and really just focus on my job. And I ended up getting a puppy, so that kind of helped. So, and finding the answers was just really taking other people's feedback and creating my own answer from that. So I would ask this person about this situation. I'd ask this person, and I had a lot of friends who were retirees of Paralympics, and I'd ask them, "How was it for you when you stopped competing?" Yeah, so it's just taking little bits. It's like every single person was giving me a piece of a puzzle for me to solve, and I had to put it together. And it just was nice because I just valued a lot of things they told me.
Yeah, I think that's where people get wrong, right? They get so invested in social media and seeing, like you said, it's the highlights of people's lives, and but there are so many other incredible people out there that are doing hard work, whether it's for like nonprofits and stuff like that, and they're not posting everything about it, which there's nothing wrong with posting about it. We're not saying that, but like you said, it's just the highlights. You don't see the day to day, which
Yes.
sometimes, like you said, you had surgery, so people didn't see the day to day of like the struggles with that. Like you're asking all these questions and finding those answers. But I think
Yeah.
what's incredible is, you had that support from that community, and then getting to ask, the people that have retired from the Paralympics what did they do after? Because that's a big thing for athletes to take a step back, or someone that's in a life transition. That's really hard to find out the next steps.
Yeah. And, I don't know what it feels like for a Paralympian to just stop all of a sudden, because I've never been a Paralympian. But I was more interested in, I guess, there's, state of mind and how they processed it, with their family and, and if they're happy or not. And so, because, we can all relate to that because we're all trying to figure out ways how to be happy and how to maintain that. So I have a great privilege of being friends with like amazing people in the world who aren't always on social media. So yeah, I went spring, and then I started walking a little bit, like speed walking. And then I was like, I'm gonna do like I'm gonna do like a local race, a running race. So I did a 10K for my first race back from surgery, and I was like, this was fun. I'm gonna do something for fun. I'm not gonna do something and think about how it's gonna go towards Paris or something. And that was actually it was really nice. I was like, that was fun, and I actually got my fastest time in running, so that was nice.
That's awesome. I love how you mentioned that you did that race for fun. And I think that's a great segue into, I've talked to, and this is relatively with climbers, and I've experienced it myself, is sometimes you get so involved and invested in the training, nutrition, things like that. I got to do this, I got to do that. And you can start to lose sight of like why you first got involved in that chosen sport. I know sometimes climbers are like, yeah, I go climb for the community. It's fun. It's a great time. But then you get into that training and you start to lose that enjoyment of it. Have you ever experienced that? Or if not, how do you avoid that?
Oh, I've enjoyed where I've actually like thought to myself, why am I doing this? I'm not having fun right now. And then, oh yeah, even during a race, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. Why did I choose this sport? Oh yeah, sometimes I'm the best person to also think very toxic things. But the thing is, it's what I do after that's more important to me. So I would say I have great resilience and just pushing through those negative thoughts. Sometimes negative thoughts want to push you to, like push you to bring out your resiliency and push you to actually be stronger sometimes. So I would say there's times where I didn't feel like I was having fun, and I just said, okay, I think I'm going to maybe just not. I'm going to take this training week a little easier, because there was times where I was just training, and there was no races. Like I was training for 4 months and there's no races. That's really hard sometimes, because I'm just like, what am I training for? I need to go do something. So that's the help of a coach. Help of a coach that I actually became good friends with, and also just again talking to my family and them reminding me over and over again, you are not your sport. It's okay.
Do you have like a pre-competition ritual or like a mantra when you get into those moments like that? Like you said, you're in the race and you're starting to see these negative thoughts and you're starting to notice them. Like, how do you push them away, or how do you do you have other things you focus on to push those away?
I just think, well, I do like a countdown kind of. I'm like, all right, just focus on the swimming, because I'm like, just focus on the swimming, and then you can focus on the biking later. So it's learning to be present. And I've had many coaches tell me, Leah, you're so worried about like sometimes they give me a workout and they're like, Leah, you're so worried about what other people are doing for the workout and if they're doing it right. And also you're so worried about the whole entire workout for the rest of the day instead of just this one part of the workout. So I learned, okay, just be present. Like, so, and with the swimming, I was like, I'm just being present. I'm just going to kick butt in the swimming. And then when I get to the bike, then I'll focus on the bike. So it's learning to be present. And my rituals I do in the before any race, I kind of like to like people, I kind of just like to have fun where I get a little goofy sometimes. I'm just having fun socializing. I know some people are so intense. They're just like, they're just like, yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna Hulk it up or something, and I'm just like, hey guys, let's do this. Let's make jokes and stuff. And that's what I figured out. Like, if I can just have fun in the beginning, then there's not gonna be so much pressure and I won't panic in the water or something. And a lot of people actually sometimes were like, I don't think Leah takes this race seriously. And I just was like, I don't care. I don't need to prove that to you, because then again, I just keep kicking butt. So, also, I don't know. I don't want to be remembered for someone who, oh my gosh, Leah I cannot approach her right now. Like, she's just too much in the game, because I also want to help people who are starting too. It's just, it's not fun when everyone is just so serious and you like can't even say hi or good luck. Because I've been at that level and I just was like, I want fun. And a little bit. And my coach was always like, Leah, where are you? And I'm like, I'm in a honey bucket. And she's like, get out of there. And we just like joke around or something. So my ritual is just to have fun and socialize, say hi to everybody, and, make sure everyone else is okay too. Instead of just being focused on me and being like, being a wreck. I don't want to be a basket case. I don't know. It's not helpful.
Yeah, I like how you said, you're joking around, but you brought up like helping the newbies. And I think that's really cool. And so kind of moving forward, what kind of like legacy or what are you hoping to really do for your sport in general and kind of in the future for those that are starting to enter your sport?
I would say my number one thing is enjoy the journey. I know that sounds super cliche. Enjoy the journey, meaning like just take it 1 year at a time. Don't take it as if that one race wasn't good, don't just be like, oh well, I'm at a Paralympics. I'm never gonna go to Paralympics now. Did you see that time? I'm never going now. Like, you really gotta take it. It's like being an athlete. It's building that wall brick by brick. Every single practice you do is a brick. Every single, even every single race is a brick too. It's the same brick, looks exact same, but it's still building. And so really just try to see that from that perception. Because all those Paralympians who you see right now, I think they have more failures than they did having success. So that's what's inspiring, is watching them use all of their like mistakes or their idea of failures, and now representing their country in such a beautiful way. Because I would say their setbacks were probably some of them who became amputees, who lost their limbs. To them, that's probably a failure, but look at them now. So
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, right? Is people see the success, they don't see the failures that got you there.
yeah, and sometimes they see the failure as it's all or nothing, and you just can't do that. You can't anymore. And so I've had to learn. I'm like, okay, this race does not determine everything. It doesn't have to be.
Has your relationship with failure changed over time?
Yeah, I would say if there was a Paralympics for failure, I'd be the most decorated. But because also I think it depends on what I think failure is a spectrum kind of. So with my failures, I've just really had to learn, like, okay, maybe instead of being so upset about what I didn't do, maybe I can focus on what could I do better next time. And also, like, did you do the best you could? And was it really a fail? Because failure means you didn't even show up, but I did show up. So I guess it's not really called a failure. So it's kind of identifying, what failure is to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like how you put like, failure is a spectrum, right? Like either A, you didn't show up. So basically that could be seen as a failure within itself, right? Because you didn't show up. But then, it's a lesson of like, what did I do wrong and what did I do right? And then you can really circle back and figure out what to do better next time. Like it's just so many lessons that compound on itself.
Yeah, and failure, everything you are now, it all derives from when you were a child, and that's where it's, as an adult, I think the most important thing is really working on your inner child. That comes out sometimes when you do something, and I don't think a lot of people recognize, or they don't want to be like, I don't want to think about the past, but you don't realize that sometimes your inner child is coming out and asking you to really forgive yourself as a child, maybe for experiencing like that kind of failure or that shame.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, right? Like the shame of past mistakes and things you've done.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like swimming, sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I worked harder on that one, but I gotta forgive myself for that.
speaking of swimming, is that now, given the triathlete, do you have a favorite like discipline within that three, like whether it be swimming, biking, running, or do you kind of enjoy all three?
I would say the swimming and biking. Running, it's just sometimes we just run. Sometimes I hate when our races start like right in the afternoon and we're like in Sarasota and it's like 90 degrees. That's when running is just like, oh my gosh, this is miserable. And your legs already feel like jello from coming off the bike. The swimming is my strongest for sure. Where I don't know, I feel awesome. It's you just feel like I don't know. Some people say like, oh my gosh, I panic, and I'm like, no, I just keep going, looking, just keep going straight. I'm like, let me just get there. Let me just get there. And biking, I learned how to bike. I just learned how to bike when I was like in my 20s. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn to like this bike, and I did. And I like biking now. So sometimes I do biking for fun when it wasn't even on my training schedule, so I could learn to appreciate it.
I'd love to circle back, because we're talking about your sport again, and you mentioned that with triathlon, sometimes you like go to a race and you might have like a longer run compared to a swim, or like a longer bike compared to like a run. And how has that learning to adapt to those races, really prepared you for your sport and your life? You think it's like been a great lesson for you overall?
Having things that are not so predictable helps a lot, because it also it just teaches you just not to expect so much, and just there are little wins. You can always find a little win in anything you do, even if the environment is not being friendly to you. There's a little win that you can find. It's if you choose to find that little win. And that's why I always say like disabilities shouldn't be so personal. It's more like the environment that's making us disabled, and what's your little win that you can find to avoid that.
Well, Leah, I appreciate everything you talked about today. You've given us so much great advice, and I enjoyed learning all about you and your sport.
Thank you.
So I'm excited to hear, watch you compete here soon when you guys go and do stuff. I know you said you're not going to the Paralympics, but that's all right. You still got some other competitions, I'm sure, coming up, and you're still training. So again, I appreciate you coming on today, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have other goals on my list. I'm like, you know what? Just skip that one. I'll come back to this one later. So, yeah, and I appreciate so much. I really appreciate you asking those questions about it. It really does mean a lot when you ask those questions to athletes, who aren't always like the big gold medalists or something, because we really do have something to offer too. So I really appreciate you asking those and taking the time to research us.
Yeah, I love it. I love learning about you guys. Like, my career is probably going to be based in athletics anyways when I graduate. So I'm really excited for it. And I'm looking forward to the big thing I'm looking forward to is climbing. The para climbing will be, or adaptive climbing will be in the Paralympics in 2028. So I'm super excited about that. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? I'll try looking into that too, just for the heck of it. But it's not for everyone. But yeah, no. Hopefully we meet in person at a climbing event or something.
Sounds good. I look
there in
forward to
October.
it. Oh, okay. So you're going to go to the Adaptive Climbing Festival?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also the community, but also I can climb a little bit. So.
Cool. Well, you know what? I will look at my schedule and see if I can make it out there, because I'm 6 hours away from the red. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's campsites and stuff. You should totally look into coming and stuff. So, and talking more athletes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Leah. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Bye, Ben.